if you see here, we were able to successfully create a case with the latest testing that we have done with the test
Hey
forwarding
guys,
one,
welcome to
but the
SFTC
previous one
Quest.
has not been done because
In
we have
today's
not
video, we'll be deep
successfully
diving
saved the
into the concept
configuration
called
at the
email to
email
case,
box level.
which is
So that is
most powerful
important
and
in case if
time-consuming
you
feature
want to
in
debug
Service
this
Cloud.
one. Stay tuned for the next sessions
What are
wherein
we
which
going
we'll
to
go
learn in
deep
this
down into
video?
this
We are
configuration
going to
and also
understand
see what are
what
the
is
other
email to case,
configurations that we have at
how email
email to
to
case features
case
and
works,
how is that affecting the
what is the difference
behavior of
between
it. Now, if
on-demand
I
and
open
email
this
to
one, you
case
would be seeing the
functionality,
same features that we have
how to
configured,
set
which
it
is
up,
the priority being
and then
medium
see
and
the
the
real-time example
case
in
owner
terms of
being a
how the
queue
email to case is
and the
implemented
case origin, if we go to the details,
in the
would be
business
set
case
to the
scenarios.
email.
Without any delay, let's
So
get
that brings
started.
us to the first section
You
where in
might have
which we have
heard this
understood
email to case
the
feature
email to case,
multiple
the
times in
need
case
of
if you
email
are
to case,
well versed with
followed by the
Salesforce, in case
configuration
if you are
part, and
starting
we have
off with the
also
service
implemented a
side
feature wherein
service
which
cloud of
anybody who sends
Salesforce,
an
you
email
might
to that
have come
particular
across
email
this one.
address would be creating
And
a
today
case at
we'll
Salesforce.
understand it in
Now,
detail.
in order for
Before
us
we
to
go ahead and
understand
jump,
this concept
understand
little
what is
more
email
in
to
depth,
case,
let's
let's
stay tuned for
understand the
the next
scenario that we
playlist
might come across in real world.
where we'll be
So I
exploring
have a
it
store that
each
I've
topic
opened
one by
right
one.
now.
So it has a couple of products. That brings us to the end of
So
this
the
video.
customers would be
Stay
coming
tuned for
onto this
more.
page and they'll be purchasing it accordingly. What if something goes wrong? What if they do not find the content that they have requested for or they have purchased for? What they would do typically in case if you think from the consumer or the customer perspective, what you would try to do is you would try to reach out to the contact page in which you would try to reach out to the people in which they have listed out the details. So you would drop an email or in case if there is another option to do a web chat and the WhatsApp feature, which we'll be discussing in coming classes. For now, let's stick to the point where the point of communication with that company is via email. What you would do is you would typically copy this email address, drop an email to this web store saying this, or to the team saying that I have purchased so and so product, I have an issue with it, I am not able to see the content, or I'm not able to access something. That is what you would detail out the issue. For a company which is of small size, it is easier to track those emails over the prescribed instrument like an email or a Outlook. But for a company which is of a larger size where there are multiple people, multiple multiple teams involved, multiple agents involved, it is very difficult for them to have one email address where in which all the people would be logging in to check the customer issue. And that email would be routed to different people. And there is no track of what exactly is happening when we look at an email. If we just open an email of the customer, there would be multiple teams involved, but we do not have a consolidated information in terms of what has happened, what team has taken up an activity, where it is pending. Is it pending with the customer? Is it pending with the company? We have to go through that email to understand it. Now, Salesforce has thought through this one and given a feature called whenever you send an email behind the scenes, if the email is set up in a Salesforce in a way that it would invoke the email to case service, and as the name suggests, it will create a case in Salesforce. As in when it creates a case in Salesforce, there are multiple things that we can leverage using the CRM. We can know the contact, we can know the account. There are multiple things that we can do. And the best thing about it is when a case is being created in Salesforce, we have an option where in which we can look at the feed in terms of what is happening with the customer via email. We can understand where the case is pending. We could understand who is the person who's working on the case. If there are multiple teams involved, what are those teams that are involved, and who is the contact person to whom we can reach out to understand or to get the traction on the case. So all the things, the out of the box features of the Salesforce would come into picture whenever this email is being created as a case. Now, the thing that we are trying to solve here is how to create a case when a customer sends an email to an email address. So in order to do that, that is where email to case feature comes into picture. So that takes us to the next part where in which we'll go ahead and implement how to set up an email to case feature in Salesforce. In order to do that, first we need to go to the Salesforce org, head over to the setup. In the setup, search for email to case. Search for email to case. So when you're searching for email to case, there is a hyphen. So that way it would be easier for you to search. So make sure that you add an hyphen between email to case. So once you land onto this page, that is where you would be seeing the standard messaging from Salesforce in terms of what is this feature is all about. I'm okay with that page, so I'll click on continue. So once you land onto this page, once you land onto the email to case page, this is how it looks like. So on this page, you would be seeing what exactly email to case is all about. So it is nothing but a routing address that we'll be creating. We'll understand what exactly it is. When a user sends an email to that particular routing address, Salesforce would be able to create a case with that information that is there on the email. Now, in order to get started with this email to case feature, first we need to enable this option. In case if this is not enabled, click on edit and check this checkbox. For this org, it has already been enabled and it cannot be disabled. That is fine. So next thing that we need to look at is something we'll understand a little step by step. So as soon as you enable this checkbox, you'll be presented with the screen where there are a couple of options. If I scroll down a little, you'll be seeing a couple more options saying that send email from cases. So there is something called threading option here, email threading token in an email body. So there is something related to threading concept that has been mentioned in this section. Again, once we go through the actual email to case feature, we would know these things in better. Before we go ahead and implement something, there is one point that you need to know. There are two types of email to cases. One is normal email to case, another one is on-demand service. The difference between these two things is in the email to case normal option, we need to download a app to set the email to case feature. In case if you are going with an on-demand service, there is no need to set up anything. All you need to do is just enable this checkbox and you don't have to do anything at the local machine to run this email to case feature. All right. So that is the difference between these two options. And there are a few more limitations in terms of what a on-demand service email to case feature will do and what is the email to case feature will do. There are a couple differences. We can look at those differences at the end of this discussion. Now, moving further, as of now, what we have understood is there is an email to case setup where in which we need to enable this checkbox, and there are a couple of options that are provided by Salesforce to enhance that feature. And there are two types of email to case services. One is the on-demand service, another one email to case service, where in which in order for the email to case as an agent to run, we need to have some local setup to done. For now, we are going with this option where in which we are going with an on-demand service. For that to happen, we need to check this checkbox if this is not enabled. Now, if you see the section, there is a section called routing address. What does that mean? If you go to the top, it says each routing address is an existing email address that your customer can use to submit a case to the Salesforce, to the support team, and the email automatically converts the case based on the routing address settings. So what Salesforce is saying is, based on the configuration that you set up in here, I would be able to route the email in a way that it creates a case in Salesforce. Let's go ahead and click on new. Let cut this part. Yeah, let's go ahead and click on new. So as soon as I click on new, there's a section says routing name and an email address. So these two are mandatory fields in here.
And there are a couple more fields that we'll be discussing shortly. So the first thing that we need to know is what is the routing address, that routing name that we are going to give to this email to case setup. So think of this one. So let's say if you are exposing this email address to a website saying that customer might come up with an inquiry. You can name this as customer inquiry email, or you can just addressing the issue. Now, in order to give an email, I'll just go ahead and grab an email. I have an email which goes by the name finance analyst sftc at the gmail.com. So in case if you're wondering why I've named this finance analyst, it is a part of the playlist. I've created this email as a part of a playlist where we have explored the record level security. In case if you have not watched it, feel free to check that out. It will help you understand what is record level security and how it plays a role in Salesforce. So I'm using this email address, telling the Salesforce that anybody who sends an email to this address, I want you to look at that email and create a case in Salesforce. So that is why I'm providing that email address here. Now, if I scroll down, there are a couple of options which says save email headers. So in case if you want to save email headers, that is where you would check this checkbox. For now, I'm just leaving it as it is. And there is another option which says accept email from. So in case if there is any specific email addresses that you want to accept an email from rather than accepting all the emails, that is where you can mention that information in here. You can just use an example in here. You can say john@mycompany.com, yahoo.com. So whatever the email where the domain name goes by this one, that those emails would be accepted, rest all are being rejected. You can think this feature as a filter in terms of what emails needs to come into Salesforce as a cases. So that is the filter that you can set up in here from this option. Now, the next section that we have is a task section. In case if you want to create a task from an email, you can just do that. If you check this checkbox, you can just mention the status of the task for the task that has been created. So it is all automatic. We don't need to do anything. All we need to do is check this checkbox. For now, I'm more interested in creating a case rather than looking at a task. For time being, what we'll do is we'll shift our focus to the next section, which is case settings. Now, when a case has been created, we need to understand who is the case owner so that way we can reach out to them to understand where we stand on a case once it is created. For that, you can just do this case assignment using an user or via queue. In case if you want to assign in this all the cases that have been created from an email to case to a queue, you can go ahead and do that. Or in case if you do not have a queue as such, you can just name the queue as per your convenience. In case if you do not have a queue and you want all the cases routed to one person and that person routes the case depending on the team's availability and capacity, you can just assign it to a user. We're talking about a case owner here. That is a field on a case object. Next we have is a case priority. Case priority is a field again on case which decides what is the priority of the case. Is it critical? It is low? Is it medium? Is it high? Depending on that, people would be prioritizing the case when a case is being created. So these are all the part of the Service Cloud features in which we talk about the case management. So last but not least, we have an option called case origin. So this helps us understand where the case has been originated from. So in our case, since it is an email to case, the origin of the case is an email. So I'll select this email as an option in here. In case if you are creating a normal case, if it is a phone inquiry, then you would set it to phone. So since that is not the case here, I'm just mentioning task email for the case origin. And there are a couple of options in here, which is the flow settings. For now, we can just ignore them. For the setup of the email to case feature, this is all this is the basic settings that we need. And once done, you click on save. And Salesforce would do some magic in terms of enabling the email to case feature for us for the email that we have provided. So remember, we have used a routing address name that has been highlighted here, and this is the email. And the next we have is a long email address. If you see here, it says email service address. This is also called as long email address in case if you are hearing it from someone who is using this email to keys for a while, they would also refer this as a long email address, which is nothing but whenever user sends an email to this particular address, that is where Salesforce would create a case for us. And rest all features remain as is. One thing that you can do is verify your email address so that way you can say that, okay, so that way you can say the Salesforce that yes, I'm using this email address and I have access to this email address. Because once you set up an email address, and in case if you do not have access to it, there is no point of setting this up, because if there is anything that goes wrong, do not have an option to go back and check something. And there is one more step that we need to do, and that also impacts your access to that email box or the inbox. So I just opened another tab wherein which we see that email coming from Salesforce for us to verify. So if you see here, there's an email that came from Salesforce saying that verify your routing address. So it is saying that click on this link to confirm. So I'll just go ahead and click that, and my verification is done if I provide the credentials in here. So I'll just enter the credentials so that way Salesforce know that this is the email that I have access and also the org for which it is connected to. So we are just providing the authorization here. It's a one-time activity. Once done, you will be redirected to the Salesforce org in here. So let's go back to the Salesforce page. So this is the long email address that we have in place, and this is the email address that we have verified. So let's quickly do a refresh to see if there is any changes on this page. So if you see here, earlier the email address says verify. Now it has been marked as verified. That means we have successfully verified this email saying that I have access to that inbox, and anything that is needed in anything that I need to change in that inbox or that email account, I have an access. I can go ahead and do that. Now Salesforce has that acknowledgement. Now what is the next step in here? In order to test this feature, let's go ahead and copy this email address and go back to that mailbox from where we have started off this authorization. And so this is the email box that I have access to. In order to test this feature, I'll quickly jump to another email address so that way it makes more sense for us to see this in action. So I'll switch to a different email address. Again, this email has been created for another series that we have uploaded on YouTube, which is the record level security. So what I'll do is I'll quickly click on compose and paste this email address, and I'll just say test case and body as test body. Just mention it as subject. And let's see what would happen if I send an email from a different account. So this email address goes by technician1sftc gmail. So we are sending it to a long email address that we have configured at Salesforce. Before we go ahead and do that, let's see how many cases that we have in the org, so that way we have a understanding in terms of if there is a new case that comes up. So I'll quickly go ahead and switch to case object. I'll say all cases. So as of now, there are no cases in the Salesforce org. Let's see what would happen if I send an email to the long email address that we have set up. So I'll just go ahead and click on send. Now going back to Salesforce. So now if you see here, as soon as I refresh that screen, there is a new case that got created and it goes by the subject that we have added in the email. And if you look at the status, it is set to new and priority is set to medium. Why it is set to medium? So if you go and see this settings in here, we have set up the case priority as medium and case origin as email. So the case origin is also set to email and the case owner, if you remember, it has been set to a queue as per our configuration in the email to case. So it has been assigned to a queue. So this is how you can easily create a configuration in Salesforce so that any email that is being sent to a particular long address, it would create a case in Salesforce. Now, as and when a case is being created, it would be easier for people to track on this one to understand who is the contact of this particular case and what is the status of this case. Is it new? Where it is pending? All the knowledge articles, anything that you want to share with the customer can be attached to this one. And you can also contact this person via an email and everything has been tracked in here. In case if you want to do a call log, all those changes would be tracked in a case. It is just the CRM application and the usage of a case management once a case has been created. Now, if we go back to the first example that we have started off with, imagine that we have a long email address that we have used to send an email to, and it has created a case, which is very good. This is one. This is the long email address. Imagine putting that long email address in this section where we say contact us. Would it be easier for people to copy that email and send an email to the particular team? We can say it is little difficult in case if they missed out any letter or any space or anything that happened while during the process of copying, they might not send an email, but the assumption from the customer would be like they have sent an email, but then there is no response from the company. How do we set this? How do we address this issue? In order to address this issue, that is where the routing from the email would come into picture. Now it would make more sense why Salesforce has asked us to authorize the email box before setting this up. Now let's understand that. I've switched back to the email configuration or the email box that we have started off with. So this is that financeanalyst@sfdc.com @gmail.com. So once you land onto this page, so I'm just sharing this example for a Gmail. There are similar steps for an Outlook or a different email box that you have in place. I'll be sharing those details in the description. Feel free to check that out. Now, in order to do a forwarding, what we need to do is click on settings, scroll, scroll to the section where you see all settings, click on that. And that is where you would see an option called forward and POP/IMAP. Click on that section and that is where you would see an option called add a forwarding address. So this is the place where you would paste the long email address and click on next. Now you might ask what exactly this steps is. What exactly the step is. So it is nothing but whenever somebody sends an email to this short email address, which is the financeanalyst@sftc@gmail.com, it internally sends an email to this particular long email address. So that way, Salesforce would know that, okay, so this is the email service that I've provided. So email is coming to this address. So I need to go ahead and create a case. So it is indirect. It's a way of setting up a intermediate. So you can just think of this as a You can think of this as an intermediate setting wherein which any email that is coming in to this email address, which is the short email address, it is forwarding it to the address that we have configured in our Salesforce or configured in our Salesforce or. So you can think of this as a email box or email service and this as SFTC. So any email that is coming in from outside to this email, in this email configuration, we have set it in a way that it has to forward to this long email address. Since the long email address configuration is in SFTC, so it will go ahead and create a case for us. So that is what this setting is all about. Now we have done that. Let's go ahead and see if there is anything that is required for us to go ahead with that. All right. Now we have set this up. So what it says is, now as soon as you done that, there would be an email that would be sent to your Salesforce org. So if you remember, we have done the opposite where Salesforce has sent an email to the email box. Now for this email routing to happen, there is another email that comes to your Salesforce org. So if you remember, we have configured this way. So we have verified from Salesforce, from Salesforce to the email box earlier. Now, when we set up a routing address, it wants to make sure that we have access to that particular box or the place where we have set up this email service. So now email is asking us to verify your way to access the content where this email is being forwarded to. We have done this process. Now we are doing this one. From email, when we have set up the routing address, it is asking us to verify if you have access to the place where this email is going to. So as soon as you refresh the screen, you would be seeing a second case that has been created. Do not worry, it is nothing to do with the actual case that we have sent. It is nothing but a confirmation. If you see this content, you would be able to understand. So it is nothing but it is saying that this email address, which the short email address that we have, has requested to automatically forward this email to this address. To allow, what we need to do, to allow this to happen, we need to click on this link, right? So once you click on this link, click on confirm. So that is where your email forwarding would be done. So now the email, the short email address that we have set up earlier, this configuration of routing that we have set up earlier, has been successfully complete. If I refresh the screen, now the forwarding has been done. All right. Now, now let's go ahead and do some testing. In order for us to do this testing, what we need to do is we need to switch to the other email box that we have, where in which we started off sending an email initially. So what I'll do, I do not want to send this email to this long email address. I'll just copy it from the configuration that we have done. So I'll go to the so I'll just grab that email address, paste it in here. So I'll say testing with forwarding email address. All right, so this is what we are trying to do. So copy it, paste it in here. and I'll just say send. So whatever that we have done, if it is done correctly, again, we should be seeing an email in Salesforce, and that email would be created as a case by the time we go ahead and check the cases in here. So let's refresh this one. As soon as you set that up, you need to just click on forward a copy of the incoming to this email address. That way we say that whoever sends an email to this short email address, that email should go to this long email address. In addition to that, we have an option whether to decide whether we want to keep a copy of that email in this box or you just want to directly send it to the Salesforce org and delete that copy from in here. So once done, click on Save Changes. Now, once this setup is completed, that is where you need to go ahead and test it. So that is why you do not see a email coming in through. So let's go ahead and quickly do a test. I'll just mention it as one, so that way we know which email address, which email is being recorded at Salesforce. So we have sent that email. So let's go back to the Salesforce.
Hey guys, if you like this video, do like, share